Mark, I alluded to it a minute ago. You're out there in the great state of Georgia, and Desmond Ridder, he got pretty much assured that he is going to be the starter for opening day and what have you, that he is their guy. How much of this is just trying to make Desmond Ridder feel good in the interim, and how much do you actually think that he's going to be the starter day number 1 for the Atlanta Falcons?
Well, knowing what I know of head coach Arthur Smith, he does not give a rip what you think, write, say, tweet, do whatever. It's just not his concern. And I will say this much. I have beyond ultimate faith in Arthur Smith as a head coach. I still think he's underrated. I still think people aren't giving him enough credit for what he does as a coach. It's not going to be aesthetically pretty. They're not going to be an offensive team that lights up the scoreboard like a Christmas tree. They're going to look very similar to what they did last year, which was probably not throw the ball more than 20, 22, 23 times a game and depend heavily on a run game that's going to get them through, grind the clock, and try and win games that way. I mean, I think that they've committed to Desmond Ridder. I think they feel comfortable about using the cap space to build a good team around him, and they want to see for at least one more year if Desmond Ridder really is the guy. Because Arthur Smith has said this, if Desmond Ridder is the guy, guess what? They have a window that's open now for another 2 seasons after this one to go out and be a really competitive team and go try and at least get a deep playoff run, possibly get to a Super Bowl. They kind of owe it to themselves to at least give him the opportunity to play a full 17 games and see where he is. If it goes bad, they'll yank him quick. And that's why Taylor Heineke is there, because he's won games. He's a great spot starter. He's a great fill-in guy. And they went down the road they did. I still think Lamar Jackson would have been the smarter road. I think Lamar Jackson would have been the better road, but they don't pay me to be an NFL GM. So, and they didn't ask my opinion. That said, it's going to be a fun watch for the Falcons, to say the least, to see how Desmond Ridder grows.
And it is a fun watch to just see what is going to be happening with Lamar Jackson. I'm going to throw this to you first, Megan, because I'm still of the belief that when it's all said and done, Lamar Jackson is going to find his way to Baltimore. Hopefully management realizes, we need to pay this guy, because who are we going to draft that's any better than Lamar Jackson, whether that be this year, whether that be next year, because guys like that just don't grow on trees. But what do you make out of everything that has been happening in Baltimore, and what are your expectations for what we're going to see out of Lamar Jackson, whether that be this year or next year? Because I just think that the Baltimore Ravens need to look themselves in the mirror and say, yep, we've got to get this done.
Well, Greg, it started off as bumpy, it started off as problematic, and now it's burning. This is a broken relationship. Can it be mended? Maybe, but I don't know. I mean, you've got your quarterback targeting your head coach, tweeting that he requested a trade, unless it was the most coincidental thing of all time, as John Harbaugh steps up on the stage to have his press conference at the owners' meetings. This has gotten real ugly real quick. And I don't know if Lamar Jackson stays in Baltimore. Honestly, you think about a player that needs to have motivation for this team. And we heard Coach Harbaugh say all the right things at the owners' meeting, that if Lamar Jackson's dressing in purple and black, he's going to be all in. I don't know how he could be all in if he's on this franchise tag. He wants that long-term deal. He wants that guaranteed money. Some of it is earned. Some of it is a little bit skewed because of what the Browns did in paying Deshaun Watson in a fully guaranteed deal. That's unfortunately now the bar that is set for these players, and that's what he wants. Having said that, we're just talking about the Atlanta Falcons. I'm not fully in the belief that the Atlanta Falcons are officially done with Lamar Jackson and that they're not going to be going down that route. If you're Atlanta, why would you not? And you can hear from the owners, from the coaches in Phoenix saying, okay, maybe, we didn't want to go down this route. I still think it's wide open for the Atlanta Falcons. Lamar Jackson could end up in Baltimore, but if I were betting on it, I'd say he ends up somewhere else. It's too broken right now.
It's just such a strange ordeal. And Mark, I've got to get your thoughts here. What are your thoughts on everything? Do you expect to see Lamar Jackson back with Baltimore, or does someone step up to the plate and try to trade for him?
Well, I'll address what Megan said first. Is it a fixable relationship? Sure it is. If you give him what he wants, everybody will be, he'll be like, that's how you fix it, right? You give him exactly what he wants and he shows up and plays. So that's the only thing that will fix it. So, but I agree with you, Megan. It's definitely on fire. Like the walls are, and this doesn't happen to the Baltimore Ravens. I covered this team for a decade. They're one of the most savvy organizations in all professional sports. This stuff never happens. Now, do I think there's still a possibility they can get a deal done? Yeah, because it's the Ravens and I know that organization inside and out. And I do think it's done. I don't think he's coming to Atlanta. I don't think the Falcons are in on him, despite the fact that their owner went all in on Deshaun Watson. I can't understand why you wouldn't be all in on Lamar Jackson. But, I mean, again, let me throw this out there. Because this would, if I'm the Ravens, my first phone call is to the Carolina Panthers. Take Lamar Jackson. We'll take the number 1 overall pick, and you got your quarterback. We'll develop a young one here. And I'm always a bird in the hand guy, right? Like the known commodity is 10 times better to me than the prospect. There's too much if you're giving me a former MVP Lamar Jackson and I'm the Carolina Panthers and I can afford him, I'd make the trade. Get him there. Your things are going to be fine. Lamar Jackson is worth 7 or 8 wins on his own, period. So if that defense in Carolina is as good as it's starting to look and it's forming the way we think it is, that's a playoff team with Lamar Jackson, no doubt. C.J. Stroud, I don't know. Bryce Young, I don't know. Could the Ravens make C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young a quarterback that takes it to a playoffs? In that division, I'd scratch my head a little bit. In the AFC, I'd scratch my head a little bit. But if you're in the NFC South in a very winnable division, and Lamar Jackson comes there, guess what? That team is winning that division and going to the playoffs.
I think you bring up such a good point, and if the Carolina Panthers were able to get that deal, it's one that I would take 10 times out of 10 if I were running the Carolina Panthers, because, I mean, even if you love C.J. Stroud, even if you love Bryce Young, you've got a known MVP that you're able to trade for. I would do that every single time. And Megan, when it comes to those NFL draft odds, the odds for the number 1 overall pick, that's right now in favor of C.J. Stroud. We're currently minus 330 to go number 1 overall. How do you view this draft, and do you think that C.J. Stroud should be this big of a favorite? Because if the Carolina Panthers do go the way the betting market is thinking, I think that it's the correct move personally.
I think it's the correct move. We keep hearing when you look at different draft analysis, C.J. Stroud has the higher ceiling, might take a sec to get ready to play, maybe not as ready to go as Bryce Young, but Carolina Panthers, they're okay with making these more bolder moves. You've got an aggressive owner in David Tepper. That's why I wouldn't throw out the Lamar Jackson trade either, Mark. That's a pretty good deal if you're the Carolina Panthers and you're the Baltimore Ravens. If this relationship isn't able to be fixed, which everything can, and you're right, if they pay him what he wants, then it can be fixed. But that's a good solution, because if you're Carolina, you get a player that's young, an MVP player that's starting fresh and joining a team that it's going to be competitive in an NFC South where you don't really have much competition. And then as far as C.J. Stroud goes, Baltimore Ravens, I think he would be a perfect fit. You mentioned this, Mark, this Baltimore Ravens organization, they are one of the most classy. They figured out, they have such a successful franchise from ownership, GM, coach, all the way down. It's going to be interesting to see how this one folds out.
Oh, it is going to be very interesting, and things are just going to get even hotter and heavier when it comes to the NFL once the draft comes and goes. And I know that both of you do a great job of covering the league. Megan, you do great work at Wager Talk. Mark, you do great work at PicksWise. Always a pleasure to have you both aboard.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.